Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are embarking on a really intensive, highly structured masterclass. If you're looking to understand the fundamentals of biomedical equipment technicians, or BMETs, and you want to absolutely crush the CBET certification exam, you're in exactly the right place. So let's get focused, learn efficiently, and conquer this material.
Here is our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to start with the certified BMET role, then cover anatomy and electrical fundamentals, dive into healthcare IT and cybersecurity, tackle equipment function and troubleshooting, and finally wrap the whole thing up with safety and regulatory standards.
Before we really get into the technical weeds here, let me ask you, what actually keeps a hospital running? I mean, picture a sudden influx of critical care patients hitting the ICU. Ventilators absolutely must not fail. Infusion pumps have to be perfectly calibrated. It's not magic keeping these running. It's the highly trained BMATs working diligently behind the scenes.
Okay, let's dive into this because there is a massive misconception out there about who actually does what. Like, what is the real difference between a biomedical engineer and a biomedical equipment technician? Well, engineers typically need a bachelor's degree, and they focus heavily on designing and manufacturing devices. Think, creating surgical robots or artificial organs. But BMETs, they're the frontline responders. They're the ones installing, maintaining, and troubleshooting that equipment right there in the hospital to ensure it's always safe and ready for patient care.
All right, let's jump right into our first section, the certified BMET role.
You really can't talk about BMET training without acknowledging the incredible military foundation of this career. We're looking at the Medical Education and Training Campus, or MTC, down at Fort Sam Houston in Texas. They provide this rigorous 10-month tri-service training program for the Army, Navy, and Air Force. It's an intensive, lockstep curriculum that gives graduates just an incredible technical foundation. It actually even provides college credits toward an Associate of Applied Science degree. Talk about instilling the deep discipline required for the job, right?
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the Association for the Advancement of Medical Instrumentation, or AAMI, weights the CBET certification exam. It's a 165-question test, and look at exactly where your focus needs to be. A massive 60% of the exam is dedicated to equipment function and problem solving. IT makes up 17%, anatomy and electrical is 13%, and safety takes up the remaining 10%. So basically, this breakdown is your ultimate study guide.
Moving right along to Section 2, Anatomy and Electrical Fundamentals. This intersection of circuitry and biology makes up that 13% of the exam.
You absolutely have to know your foundational electronics cold for this. Components like SCRs, diacs, and triacs, they aren't just alphabet soup. They're the critical gatekeepers used to regulate power, voltage, and current in complex medical devices. To fix these systems, you've got to thoroughly understand how power conditioning and distribution systems work right down at the component level.
And hey, we don't just learn electronics for the fun of it. Electrical voltage directly sustains physiological systems. Think about it. You need to know the major components and abnormal functions of physiological systems because a tiny unchecked voltage spike or a failed power supply module, that could instantly crash a life support ventilator or a dialysis machine that is physically keeping a patient alive. It's that critical.
Okay, let's transition to Section 3, Healthcare IT and Cybersecurity. This is a rapidly growing area that now accounts for 17% of the exam. Because modern medical devices aren't just electrical boxes anymore, are they? They're highly networked computers. Your daily healthcare IT duties are going to include troubleshooting hardware, updating and patching system software, and managing complex wired and wireless networks. It also involves ensuring direct, seamless device integration into electronic medical records, or EMRs, all while strictly following data protection standards to keep patient information locked down and safe. So, the crucial point is installing software patches to protect devices, like infusion pumps, from cyber threats. BMETs support connected device systems to maintain the security and integrity of hospital networks against really costly cybersecurity incidents. A hacked infusion pump isn't just an annoying IT glitch. It's a literal, life-or-death patient safety emergency. No joke.
All right, let's move into Section 4, Equipment Function and Troubleshooting. Remember, this is the massive 60% core of your certification.
Imagine multiple emergencies hit the floor at exactly the same time. How do you decide what to fix first? Well, you have to prioritize medical device repairs based on 3 critical steps. Number 1, the level of risk to the patient. Number 2, the urgency of the clinical need. And number 3, the potential downtime of the unit. A sudden ICU equipment failure is always going to take priority over a routine preventative maintenance check. You've got to be able to handle that pressure and make the right call instantly.
Here is another totally essential distinction for troubleshooting: device errors versus use errors. Device errors are actual mechanical or software faults in diagnostic or therapeutic equipment that require your technical, hands-on repair. But use errors? Those are clinician mistakes, like when a nurse says a device is broken, but, they just haven't tried turning it off and on again. That's a use error. BMETs play a vital role here by leading clinical staff tutorials to ensure proper use and drastically reduce those kinds of occurrences.
Finally, we arrive at Section 5, Safety and Regulatory Standards.
And this brilliantly illustrates the regulatory alphabet soup that governs this entire profession. You must ensure absolute compliance with NFPA 99 for healthcare facility safety, the Joint Commission for Hospital Accreditation, OSHA for workplace safety, the FDA for medical device regulation, and CMS for Medicare and Medicaid standards. Yeah, it's a highly complex matrix, but mastering it is absolutely essential for the 10% of the exam focused on public safety.
On the ground, in the hospital, all of that translates to strict, uncompromising public safety protocols. You might be working in a sterile surgical suite 1 minute and then a highly infectious isolation unit the very next. That means following universal precautions without fail. You've got to properly use your personal protective equipment, you need to understand safety data sheets, you have to execute rigorous infection control, plus you need to efficiently utilize CMMS systems to thoroughly document every single one of your maintenance activities.
So, what does it actually take to officially earn the title of Certified Biomedical Equipment Technician? 116. That is the exact minimum number of correct answers you need to pass the rigorous 165-question, 3-hour CBET exam. Every single concept, protocol, and electronic component we've covered today is a stepping stone to hitting that magic number. Let's move to this quote and see how this builds the broader impact of the profession. Ian Schell, a medical device electrical safety expert, said, "Biomedical engineering has suddenly become the most important engineering discipline in the world." I mean, events like the COVID-19 pandemic absolutely proved the life-saving necessity of this field. When hospitals desperately needed ventilators functioning perfectly around the clock, it was the biomed techs who kept those machines running and literally kept people alive.
Which brings us to our final thought. As modern healthcare becomes entirely reliant on advanced, networked, life-sustaining technology, are you ready to become the critical link between the machine and the patient? It's a high-stakes role for sure. There's absolutely no room for error. But as we've seen in this explainer today, it is undeniably one of the most vital careers in medicine. So keep studying, stay focused, and go get that certification.